Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel in my slightly dirty rag. And welcome back to what probably will become a new series that I'm going to call Back to Basics. So basically, I've done repair videos before, but I want to do them in some kind of not chronological, but some kind of order. So, I guess without further ado, let's just get started. Let's get right into it. So, we'll start off with this. Now, when we're talking basics, there's nothing more basic than your standard Thomas, alright? Now, this is a little bit of a special one. You astute among you may have realized, I'm just going to adjust the camera slightly. Astute among you would have realized that this is actually a four-wheel Thomas. So, you have two revisions, and I'll go grab the other one right now. Here's the revision. So, you can see why we call it the four-wheel. Doesn't have any catch here. Now, if you're not familiar with this catch is spring-loaded. This is actually on incorrectly. I'll have to show you in a future video how to put that on correctly. But this catch is there to prevent the body being able to be lifted up without this being pulled down. It's basically a security feature. You can imagine if you had a small child, this is a lot harder to get access to because of this spring-loaded mech than this where it's just squeezed and it comes off. Now, I have done something already, which some of you may have noticed, some of you may not have, and that is I've removed the tires. And look, if you're getting these in a bulk lot or anything, my first port of call, well, my first bit of advice to you would be to grab a pair of scissors to cut the tires off. Now, the reason for that is actually quite clear. You see, the tires have a bit of a habit of, how would you say, disintegrating, and when they disintegrate they go really sticky, and trust me, I've had this issue. They'll stick to anything. So I know most people would store their trains, for instance, on top of each other or in drawers, and you just get that residue everywhere. That, and it becomes nearly impossible to remove from the wheels. So because this is going to be back to basics, let's talk about the basics of what you should check for if you're buying one of these in person. Alright, the first thing I'd recommend is flip it on without a battery in it. What we're checking first is this gear. You can see how there's resistance there. I can't actually push the gear any further. Now that indicates to me that the gear is probably still intact. Now it could be just on the brink of breaking, but you need to get further into it to really tell. But it's a good sign if it's not. Next thing we're looking at is, actually this one's good, the switch. So now, not a deal breaker, but the switch, especially round into this part about here, alright, terrible, it's hard to get the lighting, but it does like the crack around here. Look, it's a very typical thing. And it's unfortunate, but honestly, I was just throwing them out or like scrapping them, keeping the metal bits, but now I basically just glue them back together. It doesn't really make much difference. As long as you add some sort of support to that, it's fine. So that's basically what you can look for on the outside, except for just general condition. I mean, the sticker's in nice nick. These are okay. Not perfect. You can see there's a fair bit of wear there. Check the running board. Again, this one's not great. Typically, I would scrap these, take out the metal contacts, and just, especially around here, that's pretty bad, and just scrap this, but I won't, only because it's a four-wheel. I do typically repair these. So anyway, let's get started. So we take this off, being gentle. Alright. Now, this item I don't think has ever been apart, and it is from 1998. This model is older than me. In fact, that makes it 27. In fact, because this is in April 2000, can you tell because of the D? Sorry, I should go back. It says D8 on the inside. Now, what does D8 mean? Well, the D means the month of the year, so that means that this is April, and the 8 means the year. Now, when they went into the 2000s, they actually added an O on the front, but you can tell this is just a 98, because it's just got the single number. It's painted face. What do I mean by that? Well, on later Thomases, the face switched from being part of this molding to being its own separately fitted part, and you can tell that because this face is painted on. The easiest way to tell in photos is you look for this ring around the smoke box. That's how you tell it's a painted face. I want to point out I did not discover all these things. These were all found by people before me who have looked at these for far longer. So what you can do if you want is you can test the model. Let's see. Okay, no signs of life. Anyway, so there is signs of life, and it actually doesn't sound too bad. Let's see if we can improve upon that. Okay, there is a bit of corrosion around the front here. Don't think it's too... We'll inspect that, but it doesn't look too bad. It looks like it needs to be scraped off. Okay, let's get to disassembly. So, what do we need? Well, we need a screwdriver, which I've got. We also need one of these screwdrivers. So I'll explain what's going on here. So I have this kit. This isn't actually the screwdriver that comes with the kit. This is a ratcheting screwdriver. Now, I've always said that I would recommend, if you have them, which I think I do in this kit. Yep. There's different types of Phillips head screwdrivers. You have these like pointed ones. Alright, I'm not a massive fan of these. I tend to prefer the flat ones. I find they don't like cam out as much. But this kit's great because it's got a couple of tools you need. So it's got a triangle bit, which I don't know what that'll come up on camera, which I use for, which is what you want to use on some later ones, but also comes with this bit here. Now this I think is used for certain types of screws, but actually it's really helpful for getting the rods off, which is our first job here. Alright, so let's get these rods off. I'd like to make sure the switch isn't on for this part just because they will move a bit. Now, people use a lot of different tools here. The only thing I'd advise is just caution, be slow, be careful. We're going to put it down the table. Get the feel for how if the rods actually want to come off, which these are not wanting to. Let's try this again. Or do you switch it on? Maybe you switch it on. I don't usually have this much trouble. Intriguing. You know, actually, we'll leave the rods. Sometimes I do it with the everything attached, but maybe this time I'll try it without. Alright. If you're having trouble with the rods, just take it all apart. That's what I'm about to do now. So you've got the first bit here. So you unscrew this screw. This lifts off. Alright, there's 3 weights in there. I thought there were usually 2. I mean, I haven't taken one of these apart for a while. And usually there's a bit of paper in here. I don't know whether the earlier ones did have it, but I always put it in because it's just some paper. I'll show you how to do it later. But it's basically, you just cut some paper and it stops the wheel set here rubbing up against the magnets. That's all, the weight, sorry, that's all it does. Then we undo these 2 on the back. Alright. So you've got 2 different types of screws here. You've got these longer ones. Now these go into the motor, this part here. And this shorter one, this one goes into the front. I'm just going to leave them all together, but just know that if you're doing this yourself. Now this should come off. There we are. Alright, have a look at that wheel set. Looks to be intact. With this disassembled, we have sort of the main parts, but now we're going to try and tackle this wheel set again. There we go, 1 rod. The wheel set's out. A lot easier to do when the wheel set's out. There we go. You see, I didn't cause much damage to that. You're going to cause a little bit, but just try to limit it. You could try and use a different tool. I know people use forks, like kitchen forks, but I find this tool to be quite effective in most cases. Sometimes you'll break a rod, but just the way it goes. Alright, now we've got we'll put the motor aside for a second. Let's have a look at what we've got here. So, firstly, we've got the chassis. So, you have different ways to clean this, all right? But the one thing I would say not to use at all, do not use isopropyl. This stuff is strong, and it will just strip the paint right off any of these parts. So the fact that the buffers still have paint is a miracle, so we're going to try not to strip that off. Now you've got different options in terms of cleaning. My go-to is always Q-tips, and I'll use that in conjunction with, put them off to here, with a little bit of glass cleaner, although I don't tend to use this pure anymore. I'll use it with diluted with some demineralized water. So let's have a crack. So just dip it in there. Okay. I'm going to start cleaning around here. This is where the wheel set sits. There's usually a bit of gunk there. Right. And typically it's just going to be mostly areas that the body isn't on. So usually along the outside. Good time to check for corrosion inside. One of the areas that typically you have issues is around here, because the metal's bent, it's pretty thin. Now I'm going to switch to a toothbrush. We're just going to try and scrape away some of the corrosion around the terminal. Alright, now we're just going to pick it a bit. You will remove the coating with this, that's the only thing, but you kind of want to get the corrosion out of there as well. It's kind of a bit of a one of this, two of that. We're not going to worry too much because it works and there's honestly not that much corrosion. If you break that terminal, you can kind of replace it. I'll have to do a video on that. I still haven't got it quite perfect yet, so I won't show it off in this video. But there are ways to remove it. There are ways to put it back on with riveting, but it's difficult. And like I said, this is just meant to be a basic guide for your basic just servicing, which I'd recommend you do. I mean, again, this item's, I can tell, has probably never been opened in its 27 years of ownership. Because usually, you got to remember, the average Tomy doesn't work for the 27 years. It'll work for maybe 3 to 4 of those years, and then it'll languish until someone buys it. It's only now, I think, that they're starting to get a lot more life or sort of service put into them, especially as they become more and more collectible. Something I'll touch on with some other characters as I cover in this series, but they're definitely getting more collectible and definitely more expensive. Alright, and you got options with this. If there's a lot of hair around the axle, which we'll use I'm going to use a little tipped thing to sort of try and get some out. Typically what I'll do is I will just remove the wheel. Now on these ones it's fairly easy, just be careful not to crack it. You can only really remove one wheel though. When you put it back on, make sure it's quartered. Doesn't have to be perfect. Tomys they're not model trains, they don't care too much, but something like that. Check it's relatively tight on that axle, which this is. That's just an easy way to get hair off. I don't necessarily recommend it. I don't not recommend it. It's a case-by-case basis. It depends how much hair is stuck around those axles. Now, I bought some tweezers on the weekend, so let's give these a shot. I'll admit most of the time I just use my fingers, but I'll give this a crack. Not sure how I feel. Got another pair here. I'd say it's funny. I always laugh. I sell these a fair bit, and I will say that I have never actually made money on any. Because A, the time that I've spent repairing them, vastly less than my average wage per hour, and the amount of tools and whatnot I've bought to repair them. Not that you have to, Don't have a lot of time to fix them nowadays, so I'd rather just have the tools when I do feel the urge to go in and fix a couple up. Your Trackmaster 2s are far easier than this, so if you're looking for that, I have repaired a few on the channel. I don't even really have a guide on them. They're pretty straightforward. I might do a quick one day. You see, I'm just trying to get into all the nooks and crannies. Honestly, this one is a lot cleaner than some I see. Alright, we're going to just quickly dunk these and just dry them off. Just basically very quickly. Alright, rods. That's what we're up to next. So, you see, I haven't even touched the motor yet. Yeah, we're just going to try and get rid of some of this here. Well, again, for an item that's 27 years old, there's actually not as much debris on these compared to what I usually see. Dump it in there, we'll let it dry off a bit. Next one. Right, looks good. The rods tend to get pretty disgusting. I've got a few that I haven't cleaned yet that are pretty bad. These are pretty good though. Again, for 27-year-old rods, they've held up pretty well. All right, so that's that job done. The only thing we got to do for this yet, before we put it back together, actually, is go and get that paper. Now what I do is I make sure that I import my paper from Japan, okay? So you need to go out onto Japanese Amazon, you need to buy some paper. I'll link it down. I'm joking, it's just paper. The only job of this, again, is to protect the wheel set from rubbing up against the weights. So you can measure it out if you want. I tend to just eyeball it by this point. I've got a roughly good idea of where to aim for. And basically, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just something like that. That's it. I probably need to cut a little bit off that. There. That's it. I was like saving these. I think I still have a few lying around. Genuine paper, but like I said, it doesn't matter too much. Let's do a little bit more cleaning up in there. You never get marked on what people see. It's always what people don't see, and your attention to detail there. That's really... I mean, if it looks good on the outside, that's great. If it looks good on the inside, I can tell it's been looked after. Same goes for cars. Alright. Let's reassemble. Oh, I see. It's got another weight, because usually you'd have the... that piece there, that's why it's got 3 weights. Alright, this then slips in. Okay. Then all I do is just poke a hole. Grab this. And then all we need to do is, where did I put that screwdriver? Put that on. Screw it back in. Now you may ask, before we continue, why bother restoring this? Because obviously it's not in great nick. And I typically, like I said, don't. And these aren't necessarily, they're rarer, they're definitely scarcer. And that's kind of why I care, is because where the other wheelset version got about 10 years of production, frankly, more actually, like 7 years of production in the West, and more in Japan. Again, that was with the white running board. This only had production in the 90s, for only a couple of years. I think only until about 98, actually. So, there's not a lot of these left. Most of them have sort of been, sort of lost to time. Alright, so we can now basically put the rest of this together. I'll leave that out for now, although that tip, I think that goes in like that, but we'll leave that out for now. Let's turn our attention to the motor. So, this is the complicated bit, somewhat, although it's not, it shouldn't be too scary. So you've got 2 screws in here, these are small screws. All the screws for the motor are the exact same. Right, and once you take these 2 out, you have access to the gears. Alright. Ooh, it is an early one indeed. Now I'm just going to wash those later. Let's have a look. So earlier motors tend to have all these grey gears. And the first thing you want to do is visually inspect. So let's have a look. Basically what you're looking for is cracks. Now, let's talk about where they're most likely going to appear. We'll talk about this part in a minute. This is the part that probably cracks the most. Alright, this actually is the part that goes up and down, and it's what allows the TOMY engine to freewheel and then engage when you switch the switch on. This also likes to crack. Typically it's this gear. Again, this looks fine. This doesn't, this I've never had break on me. It's just, it's a whole plastic piece, so it would have to fail spectacularly. Nor does this. There's not a lot of strain put in any of these parts. This little worm gear might crack a little, but it doesn't really affect the motion at all. Let's get these all cleaned up. We're going to just put this up here. I say that as this... Which gear is broken? How badly is this broken? Ah, yeah. Well, typically this doesn't break, but this has decided to go against the usual, the norm. But luckily that's a fairly common part. In fact, I think the easiest way to replace it would be to go to my collection over here and just grab something unusual to fix this. Where is it? Let's go with... Well, I could replace the whole part, but frankly, where is it? Here. Let's just replace it with... I think it's basically the same. This is a Trackmaster 2 worm gear. And they mesh together perfectly. Same amount of turns? Maybe slightly more turns on the Trackmaster 2 gear, but I don't think it's really going to make much difference. Post-production me here. The long and short of it was, this took way too much time for me to realize it was just not worth doing. You can, and I still think there might be some sort of practical application for this idea that I've got, like that I'm trying to formulate here, but if you're a beginner, you're starting out, you run into this problem, I'll say firstly, it's not massively common. These gears might crack a little bit, but it's very rare for them to basically be able to be spun off. If you do run into this issue, Thomas is a common enough character where I'd say part-wise you're better off just cannibalizing another one, or potentially trying glue. I'm very apprehensive to the whole gluing of parts. I don't think it works long term. Like, I replace certain parts in this video because I think that they're just not going to be able to be held up to that sort of wear. Anyway, just keep that in mind. Did I break that, or that just... Okay, weird. I'm making a mess of this. Alright, let's just go get a fucking replacement. Where are you kept? I'll just cut that from the video, or I won't, and you get to see me struggle. I am going to keep toiling away with this, because I think that this might work, but... Anyway. Here's a replacement. So, if you buy a few of these, you'll have enough of these parts. Alright. Let's finish disassembling now. So, This is one of the most common motors, so you will end up with a lot of parts. Yeah, looks fine. Dip it in there. Rinse it off. There's no cracks. Don't have to do any remedial work. And the gist I'm kind of getting, judging by the overall condition of this, didn't see a lot of play, which is fairly typical. Alright. Now, this does look like a mess. Also, don't lose this spring. I don't know if I mentioned that. I didn't. This spring goes with this bit. It shouldn't fly off when you take it apart. Just keep that in mind. That goes there. They go there. And my replacement. I don't want to talk about it. Alright, now, this gear I usually just junk, but because this is actually the original, this isn't a part you can really get now. I will keep that. Alright, now, let's talk motors. Because you basically have three options, alright? Now, option one is you replace the entire motor. Now, I was able to, literally for one time, pick up about 20 original motors. Or they were from the original manufacturer. Unfortunately, I seem to have bought the last 20. So, that was on AliExpress though, so you might be able to get some more. They seem to still be relatively popular motors, I just couldn't find any. Tamiya is an option. Now, Tamiya do produce some interesting options. I have mixed opinions because they all seem to be listed for 3 volt. Which I don't necessarily... these are all 1.5 volt motors. Like they're driven by a 1.5 volt battery. Like I know you can put like the fast ones in, but I haven't tried that. So that's option one, is replace the motor. Option two is do nothing. Which, like, I say that like it's a negative. It's a valid option. Because option three is service the electric motor. Now, I don't think these are intended to be serviced. But I'm going to do it anyway. So what it involves is flicking up. You'll see here on each side there's some tabs. Now, I should see actually, can I get these tweezers under? Oh. I just use a flathead. So what you want to do is basically get under the motor, lift up. Alright, you'll see there's a tab. Basically you want to lift that off. Now I'm not going to do this on camera because you really should do it on the edge of a desk. So I'm going to get onto that and I'll be right back. Like so. You see now I flick the tabs up. Which means then if you push on the back, this will come off. And that exposes all the parts inside. So what you have are the contacts, which are on this bit here, and the commutator. Now, what I'm going to do is grab one of these little Q-tips. This is the one time I'd recommend using alcohol. Now, I'm just going to spray it on the Q-tip. Well, I'm just going to dip the Q-tip in it and then clean it off. But this is one of those things where I would recommend you be very careful with the alcohol and make sure any surface, well, any area that you're going to use the alcohol on, you do not touch any of the models. Or you do not touch the models after using the alcohol. Okay. And you can see there's just so much gunk built up around this. This is called the commutator. And this basically transfers the electrical current from the battery into the movements of the engine. Now this is, again, you remember this is a 30-year-old, what even at the time was an economy motor. This type of motor was used in a lot of things. So it really is an economy motor. So the gunk is going to be pretty bad. Now, with that all cleared off, yours may look worse. It may look better, it may look worse. This actually looks pretty good, so I'm going to stop here. But when we get to some of the other ones, there will be a lot more gunk on this motor. Now, that's when I turn to two options. One is you can get like fiberglass pencils and fiberglass and like metal and brass brushes, which really help with this. Worst case, you can sand it We're talking fine grit, 1000 grit sandpaper. Just sand it so that the surface is basically back to a really bright copper color. Again though, you've got to be careful with that because you don't want to strip too much off. Alright, now let's clean the contacts. Now the contacts are delicate bastards. I would recommend Q-tip only and very gentle because they've got holes in them and the Q-tip loves to get stuck in there. Same deal that you're basically just clearing all the gunk out. This is old grease mostly. Right, and I'll be the first to admit my solution to this isn't the best, and you're still left at the end of it with a 30-year-old motor. We should talk pros and cons. Well, the pros of doing this is that you're sticking with the original motor, original everything basically. Like sure, you might replace out a couple of gears, but for the most part it's still very genuine. What the dickens? I bent that very gently. I bent that out of shape. Damn it. The downside is, as you can see, very finicky. And if you do bend it, it takes a fair bit to bend it back into shape. These suck. And actually I bought these help actually a lot. The other thing is you are removing whatever is left of the grease in there. Now, for something that's 30-year-old, it doesn't really matter. But my solution to adding more grease, I'd admit, isn't the best. I use something called molybdenum, which is designed for plastic and metal, but I'm not sure how it... And it doesn't seem to affect the electrical conductivity, but someone in the description might be able to tell me if it's good or bad. It is abrasive, I think is the main problem. It's abrasive. Well, a little bit. Molly's like a certain... yeah. It's not abrasive enough to damage plastic, which is why I use it in my gear train. But I've got mixed opinions about using it in here. But it's a real... there's no real... basically, there's no real victory here. You can either use this grease, which might be a little bit abrasive, but again, we're only putting it on the end spindle. We're not putting it on the commutator. But of course, it's a motor. There's going to get some stuff on the commutator. I have tried Woodland Scenics, which is more liquidy. Though it's not electrically conductive though, so the moment any gets on the commutator, the engine just basically slows and dies. Lithium, basically the same problem as molybdenum. Sewing machine oil? The problem is sewing machine oil is a bit too thin, so it just all leaks out and just goes everywhere. Same deal with like if you use WD-40. WD-40 I wouldn't recommend. It's probably one of the worst options. And that's only because WD-40 isn't a lubricant. It's designed to displace moisture, which, and I guess in a motor is a good thing, but not necessarily the best option. Like people spray the whole thing with WD and I'm like, nah, that's not really helping. It's not going to really hurt it too much, but you got to clean up WD-40. I don't know if anyone's had to clean that up, but it's just a pain to clean up WD-40 and it smells. It smells bad. Molly doesn't really smell that bad. But again, it's an economy motor that realistically you can replace for about 50 cents. So that's an option. The only reason I don't do that is because I didn't put the switch in. You have to desolder, resolder, and again, it's the originality factor. I am going to start doing it for... because these aren't SM. So to be clear, the motors I was able to get were SMC, but I couldn't buy what I really wanted to, which was Mabuchi, which is what's in this. Now, so I'm thinking for some of the other models, mostly I'm looking at your... I think I put that in right, did I? Yeah. Mostly I'm talking about your later ones. So the SMC took over from Mabuchi in, I think about 06, 07. They're fine. Like, I've looked it up online. Is there much difference? And the answer is really no. Like, people will say, oh, they're great motors, blah, blah. But really, at the end of the day, no matter which motor you choose, they're all economy. None of them... you got to remember that TOMY is still a company. and they would have used the cheapest parts they could while still maintaining some amount of quality. And I get the feeling that's the case with Mabuchi and SMC. They're not the best options, they're not the worst options, they're just kind of the options. And looking it up online, asking like which is better, and basically the comment is they're about the same. Which, great. So, not really much difference there. But you can also note from this that even after some faffing around, even after screwing with bits, oh god, there's a lot of hair around that. This is actually not a hard job to do. Now, I've complained in the past just about the annoyance, and sometimes it does get annoying. Especially when the problems start to mount with just one item and you get stuck on it. I've gotten stuck on items like Percy for the better part of an hour before, just because they didn't want to play ball. And it's frustrating to all hell, and some models more than others just become the bane. I mean, I hate working on Ferdinand's. I think he's one of the worst design models they ever did. It's just abysmal. Clever? Yes. Good? Fuck no. Alright. It's all cleaned up. Use some of this grease. Is that gear cracked? No, it is. Maybe this is more common than I thought. We'll leave it. We'll leave it. It's not loose. That's the main thing. If a gear is cracked and loose, that's really bad. If a gear is just cracked, and again, it's the worm gears. All other gears, if they're cracked, replace them. It's just how it goes, because they will affect running significantly. The worm gears, though, if they're cracked, if they don't move, you're fine. Alright. Let's get this puppy back together, test him out. That's how it goes back together, in case you wanted to look. Pretty straightforward. Basically, just the reverse. Making sure the spring's back on. Otherwise, you'll switch it on and you'll find that you can't actually make it freewheel again. And you can tell it's in if you see this little bit here. Flick it up, the metal should come up. Flick it back, it should come back down. With basically no need to tap it or anything. Alright. Now, you do have, like, the blue top motors, I say, are probably some of the best. I've had these things, but they're all about as fine as each other. Alright. Don't over tighten, because again, remember, it's 30-year-old plastic. You have to be delicate. Now let's go get the one. So there are two what I like to call consumables. One we didn't replace, which was the gear that attaches to the motor, but the other I do replace, which is of course the traction tires. Now, if you're lucky, you can get these for a really, really good price. I've paid only about... If you buy them from like someone local to your country, typically they'll charge you about $1 a tire. You buy them from like Japanese Amazon, you can get them for about 50 cents a tire. But you start to think about how much it actually costs in parts and time to get one of these fixed up. And you realize a lot of the time it's more a labor of love than it is actually making money off them, which I think is totally fine. I think I'm at that point with these where I buy them, I have so many to repair, but I'm more happy to sell them for probably below what other people are charging. But, you know, I'm more interested now in repairing them, I think, than selling them. Check it's still working. Alright, let's check the running. Alright, it ran fine before, so let's give it a shot. Now typically if you clean the inside of the motor, it does have to run in a bit. That's pretty good for 30-year-old. Sorry, for 27 years old. That's pretty damn fine. Now look at that. That is strong. That runs quite well, actually. All things considered. Let's finish off by cleaning up this guy. Very delicate, and you want to be very careful around the stickers. Mostly it's just going to be a bit of dust. Funny. There we go. It's funny, these earlier ones, they didn't really get these glued in properly, so this is actually pretty loose. Put that back on. And with a finish time of 42 minutes, we have a restored Thomas. You can see how this would maybe take you 20 minutes usually, depending on the level of problems. This is a pretty stereotypical example. You get a few issues and they sort of mounted up, and I've faffed around with trying to fix this. But I think that's important to show you that, actually, the faffing around, because you tend to get distracted while repairing them. You go, okay, I can fix this, and then you try to fix it, and you end up just realizing it's probably better just to get the replacement that you have 20 of anyway. But anyway, it's one more saved. Well, not really saved, one more cleaned up. Let's talk stickers. There are some guys in the US who do repairs, like replacements. There's some ones online you could refer to. I haven't found a distributor I like yet. I do want someone who's willing to sell me like basically 50 to 20 or 30 stickers of each character. But I haven't found anyone for that yet. And then you can print them online, but I'm not happy with the quality my printer can put out. So most of the time I just keep them pretty stock. If you're wondering what one of these is worth, about 50 bucks? Nah, I'm joking. One of these is worth probably, I don't know, in the ballpark. I would sell it for about 20, 25 with Annie and Clarabelle and a bit of track. It's never going to be worth a lot. These in higher grades, you could say maybe 50, but look, I think that a pretty average Thomas, again, look at the damage, 20. And for that, you're mostly paying for the Annie, the Clarabelle, and the track. If you do the math, then it kind of makes sense. And that's 20 Australian, bear in mind. US, I don't even know. I know that your really nice Thomases are going for about 50 with Annie and Clarabelle now, which is... But this is more for someone who just wants something, basically just to have an earlier one to put on a shelf or run. It's a very good one if you just wanted to run a Thomas. You didn't want to ruin one of the better condition ones. But yeah, he's pretty bog standard. Not much to say. Anyway, thank you for watching, and bye for now.